This was one of my first owls. It has a little baby in the pouch, and it was kind of done from the help of a photographer. I think it was Marina Scar, and she's a wildlife photographer, and she had a picture of a baby in the pouch. So we kind of used that idea, and she allowed that to create this great horn with baby. I wanted to continue with owls, and after I'd been to the Vin's Owl Festival, which really got me hooked on owls, I proceeded to do a three-dimensional owl mother with baby, and then I did probably 20, I'd say, I don't know how many, maybe 20, every different owl in a 6x8 size, like you see here. A barn owl, a barred owl, all of them. I think I've hit all of them. Somebody said, would you do an elf owl next? So I studied the little teeny elf owls and did one of those. I have a friend in our local rug group, the Mad River group, who goes to Newfoundland, lives in Newfoundland in the summers, and she'd been talking about the puffins. And I started to get an interest in seeing what I could do with a puffin and with the rug hooking. I tried one, and it ended up that I did 3. One of my first birds after the owl was the loon, because I was living on a lake and we see the loons all the time. I was fascinated with their sound, fascinated with how they moved in the water with the babies. We were watching them nest in our cove one year. So I decided to do a couple small loons, which you can see here. This is one of the smaller ones by themselves in the 6x8 format. But I also did my very large piece of loons, and what that piece involved was loons in different positions. So I had one flying, I had one jumping out catching a fish, I had the mother with the babies, one feeding the babies, so different positions, and that was really fun to do. It's not just that I love birds, but sometimes birds just come to me. I'll see them 2 or 3 days in a row, or I see them flying by, or with a hawk, a red-tailed hawk. It came right up to my window 2 or 3 times telling me, you've got to research about me, do something about me. But the sandhill crane I had seen once in the south, and I thought, boy, they're very interesting birds. And so one of my first water birds was the sandhill crane, and I put a baby on him. And it was one of the first ones where I was working with a lot of textured yarns. I would take different eyelash textured yarns to try and pull up and give different look to the feathers. 2 years ago, I started working with a lot of herons. Started seeing them everywhere. They seemed to be all around me in the lake and pond. So I did little blue herons and some white egrets. And then I decided to do a big heron. So I started with a really long piece of linen. I wanted the length of the whole neck and the beak to be prominent in the piece. And it was called Bucky the Blue Heron because my mother was visiting with me at the time. She's about 92. And it was a nickname for my dad who had passed. So she chose the name, and we started calling him Bucky while I was working on him. At that time, I took a class with Diane Phillips, and she was working with a lot of different designs and a little more abstract or different types of things than I had been used to doing, and I wanted to free up my backgrounds. She said, oh, how about doing some black and white dots along the side, or how about something different? So I came up with Bucky the Blue Heron, and it ended up being a piece that got in celebrations. And then I also sold the piece. And after I sold the piece, I said, I've got to have one of those. So I did another Bucky number 2. And Bucky number 2 got more exciting with the background. So it was a similar bird, but the background's totally different. It's almost like there are fish swimming along this edge of the water. And I used a lot of different color combinations in the background for the sunset. So I was very pleased with it, and kind of it morphed into this idea where I continue to do the same type of bird facing to the one side, as you'll notice, and then kind of the water coming up on the side and different kind of designs within the corners of the piece. from that piece, I wanted to continue with the ideas of the backgrounds, so I went to a pelican. I wanted to use more velvets. A lot of my loons and water birds, I had used a lot of black velvet, green velvets, but this one had a lot of velvet into the head and neck area that was kind of fun to play with, and added a little different texture from the hoved area of the bird. Last year, I had a visitor from a nephew that lives in South Carolina, Darren, came up to my home and was looking at my birds. And he said, you know, I really love these birds. I wonder if I can have one of your birds. And I said, well, what do you want it for? And he said, well, I've been doing some work in Tanzania with an orphanage. We're trying to help this orphanage out, and we're building a little hotel or bed and breakfast because it's on the way to the Serengeti in Karutu, Tanzania. He said, so I'm thinking how I could maybe put it in the hotel or something. So it started off that way, and then it kind of progressed in my mind because I said, well, why would he want an American bird if he's in Tanzania? Maybe I should look at Africa and Tanzania and study it a little bit. I've never been there. But I decided to do a little traveling online to Tanzania. And I started to get interested in the patterns in Tanzania, different patterns, different jewelry, different colors of all the fibers and clothes that they wear. And I did one piece and tried to create in the rug hooking part of the blanket. So I picked a red beak hornbill, is a bird with a big red beak, and I played with that one first from the water birds and what I did with the designs in the side from Diane Phillips' class, and I brought some of those ideas of the designs around the bird into this Tanzania group. I did two birds. I did the crested crane, the African crested crane, two of those birds, a big one and a little one. And what I did was take a lot of these design elements and the colors from their clothing and put all the designs, as you see, into the side of the bird. Then I went on to giraffes, two giraffes, and then I did a zebra, which was very interesting. So now I've gotten more into animals and working with the details, how to get the animal to look right and still get all this design to function well in the piece. But mostly the fun was the backgrounds. So I took a lot of the shield designs from their shields and did different designs, a lot of black and white. They use a lot of spirals in their designs, so there's you'll see a lot of spiral ideas that are flowing through these pieces. And I could use a lot of metallic fabric, so I got metallic fabrics going with them. I use a lot of fused, hand-dyed fused wool that's shiny on one side from Anita Knapp. These pieces just could handle all of the shiny materials. So I went one step further and started to sew in beads. So there's a few spots where I've sewed in sequins in the center of circles and a few beads to have the African look. So when I finished the last piece, which was the elephant, I think I was up to about 7 or 8 pieces. We decided we'd donate them all to this project in Tanzania to help this small orphanage in Karutu. So when these pieces are done showing, that's where they will go. I went to South Carolina and I brought hooking supplies. I brought some frames, little frames and hooks and a whole lot of a cutter and everything you need, and taught Heather, Darren's wife, and his 3 children and 2 other people how to hook. And their idea was perhaps they would go over there and teach the women how to hook to earn money in the markets. So we had the idea of what materials would they use if they were over there, if they couldn't get wool. And we bought some Walmart t-shirts, cut them up, and hooked with some t-shirt material to show them that they could use their available materials and hook. So we'll see where that goes with the virus. They haven't been back over yet, but they do plan to go, and possibly that will happen. And they may be looking for rug hookers who would go over there and teach. Want to go that far?